Hi everybody, welcome back to the painting channel. Something a little bit different this week. It is a watercolor, but I want to show you how you can make some inventive sizes to help sell your work. So let's roll the intro. Let's see what happens. Hi everybody, welcome back. As I said at the start, it is a watercolor, but it is something just a little bit different this week. What I wanted to talk to you about was how you can create much more economically viable watercolor paintings and sell them to prospective clients through various outlets at a much better rate. Now, what I've decided to do in my gallery lately is start to create smaller watercolors in different formats that I can then put into a frame or a mount accordingly that I can buy fairly inexpensively. Now, this goes across the board. You can actually have lots of different frame sizes. You can go to many retail outlets where they sell these generic frames. You can find one that fits and you can paint using those, and therefore you can supply them in a mount or in a frame to your clients. Now, I've been doing something like this in the gallery. I decided to paint some smaller pictures that I can then put into generic size mounts and frames that I can offer at a much better rate as an original. And if they're good, I can also turn them into prints and sell them very much in the same way at even a more reduced rate, because of course they're a print. And I've also been looking at making multiple aperture window mounts and putting smaller pictures in those and then selling them in, say, a 12 by 12 or a 12 by 16 frame, and that way I can give so many more options to a very decorative piece for somebody's home. And I can also sell print sets of the very same setup. So there are multiple ways of creating more prospective sales from the artwork that you create by thinking outside of the box and making it easy to obtain not only mounts and frames, but also multiple windows and also doing prints of the same thing. So that's what I've been doing in the gallery. But before we get on into that, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about it, I just want to say thank you to all my subscribers, both new and those existing who support the channel. Thanks very much for coming on board and doing just that. And I know I read your comments and I enjoy reading those. I always answer them. And when you get to the end of this, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel. If you want a lot more than that, you know what's going to come next is my Patreon. It's growing, it's ever growing. There's so many videos over there to you to look at, get involved with and enjoy and learn from. There is also a weekly live stream every Friday night, and on top of all of that, there is a Facebook community page dedicated purely for my patrons to interact with me and with each other, where they can post work, ask questions, get answers, get help, and move forward. So there is so much to offer you. The link to my Patreon is always in the Show More tab under this and every other video of mine you watch. So take a trip over there if you like what you see and you don't mind spending $5 or $10 a month. You'll be so welcome to come on board, and you know every penny that you put into that really goes to help me pay and support the efforts I do in creating content each week for you guys to learn from and enjoy. So that would be fantastic. And without further ado, let's talk about some ways of making some money from your art in a much easier, much prospectively better way, while I paint a picture on one of those said pieces of paper. Let's get on. Okay, so what I've been doing at work is I've been taking a standard sheet of paper. Now this actually are sets cut down from a much bigger piece. Now this I think is an A3 piece or something like that. There is a little bit of wastage, but if you do good work, then one assumes that you're going to make more than enough money to cover any bits of wastage on the paper that you've cut away. And if you're a little bit careful And what I found is that not only could I cut these two pieces out, but I actually had a nice letterbox image at the bottom that I could salvage and make an even more paintings from that. Or even if I wanted to cut that down, I could make things like bookmarks and things like that, which are really interesting, and you can have a lot of fun with that sort of thing. So there's yet another way of creating a piece of artwork that you can sell somewhere for a much reduced, or not reduced, that's the wrong word, but a much more reasonable rate. So what I simply did is I took some old mount card. I know the overall size of the frame that I wanted to put them in, which is going to be one that will fit these panels here. Now I think I've got these in the wrong way. For this one here, for instance, like that. Okay, and there is a larger one, I believe. No, it's not. Yes, it is. There we go. It fits this piece. But these will go into set generic frames where I can go and I can buy a certain size frame from one of these retailers, and I know that this will go in it, and therefore I know that if I paint all the pictures, I can put them in these, into the frames or into cellophane wraps, and I can simply swap them around if I need to change them. I cut a piece of card that was just a little bit wider of the actual, well, that one is the wrong one. I get the right one again. There we go. I cut a piece of card that was just a little wider on all sides than the aperture that I was making or creating, so that I could simply draw a line around it, and I know that if I paint to that pencil line, I know that my painting is going to fit each time, every time, into the aperture that I wanted to go into. This size and this side, these are for the single frames that I'm making, and these ones will fit into an aperture that's for that size, and I can actually make a 12 by 16 frame, or have a 12 by 16 frame with multiple apertures in it, and it will take 1, 2, 3 across, and 1, 2, 3 across the bottom, so I can put 6 of these paintings into a 16 by 12 frame. And that really is quite a nice way of creating some artwork that you can still sell for very, very good money, because in fact the client's getting 6 original watercolors for the price of in one frame. And you can do it in a 12 by 12. You can use the same size with the same small aperture split between them, and you can put a set of 4 in. And that means to say that you can create many different themes. I think, you know, you could do one on still lives, skies, landscapes, anything, boats, whatever your favorite things are. Bees, I like painting bees, as you know. But anything you like, you can actually make something from it, and you can make little sets. But once you've done the originals, then you can scan and print those and create even more sets, and you can keep on going with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put one of these pieces of paper down, going to tape it down, and I'm just going to carry on chatting while I do a little, I'm actually working on a little theme of landscapes and little seascapes. So I'm just going to take this down very quickly. I know my painting is going to be well sorted out in that space, so I'm not overly worried by that. Put that down. Very quickly done. There you go. I could actually take them right up there. There's no need to. I'm not leaving any white space on these paintings. They will be framed up or matted or mounted, depending on where you're from. That it will be matted just on this side, on the inside of that line. So that will be hidden by the mount, and you won't actually see any of that. So it's no worry whatever comes on after here. So I'm just going to paint a very simple landscape. And there we are. Let's just put in a very small or sort of nice little eye line, and I'm working for some local reference here. So a little bit of hillside in the background. Now this is the North Downs. Nice big tree. And this is the thing, you don't have to be hugely specific on what's going on, what you're painting. You need to make really nice, attractive little paintings that people would like to hang on their wall for whatever reason they are, whether it's a still life or a wildlife piece. People are attracted to certain paintings, a certain genre, and you know, a wildlife painting is not going to attract everybody, but therefore nor is a still life, nor is a landscape. We each have our sets of paintings or subject matter that really attract us. I think that's all I need to do as a drawing. Something very, very simple. Little lead-in line there, maybe a little track or something from the farmer's tractor. They go off into that space there. Okay, so the drawing is very, very quick. It's very simply done. Didn't take too many minutes, but now let's get in some colour. So I'm going to do my sky, and I'm going to put some nice ultramarine blue. Make quite a bit of that. It's a very, very dominant part, obviously. And I'm going to come into that with a little, very subtle, light colour. Get rid of the blue out of the brush. There we go. Nice bit of yellow ochre. So let's come back into our blue again. And let's just quickly put in our sky. Now the idea of these paintings really is not to labour over them too much. We need to get them in, done, so that hopefully we can sort of move on to our next one and create a series of work very, very fast, very quickly. I'm putting a little bit more water into that to make that flow a little bit more, like that. Now I'm going to come in with my ochre, and I'm just going to pull that in and create my clouds like that, making some of them soft edges, some of them hard edges. If you want more soft ones, gently tap the brush along the edge with a little bit of moisture in it, and it will take out as much or as little of that hard edge that you wish. I quite like what's left there. I'm going to leave that on. Just going to bring some more of that down through here, and then put in some nice blue, but much more reduced, much more water going in. And let's create our passage down to the top of the hills. So there we are. So there's pretty much one sky done. Just going to fill that in, just miss that, not a problem. There we go. So that's, let that dry, let that settle up. I'm just going to take a real dry, almost dry brush, just soften that bit there. Just tease that around so that it's not as hard. And get away with that. I'm probably going to leave that and not take the chance. But there's our sky. So we've got that sorted out. Now let us look at our hills. So for that, use the same blue. Put a little bit of Indian red into that. So we get this sort of very dull violet colour. Let's push that through. That's a little heavy. We can make that lighter by just coming across with a bit of water in our brush. Not too much, but just a little bit of water. Take that through, and that's taken the pigment and the impact out of that colour. Just bring in a little stronger one as it comes through here, and bring that down to our horizon line. And while that is starting to dry off a little bit, I'm going to look at putting some aureolin in there. And to that I'm going to add a little bit of my turquoise, not too much. I want a really nice light flush of green through there. It may ping itself back into the hillside a little bit because that is still quite wet and I am moving quite fast, but not a problem. I'm going to bring in some phthalo green now. Look at the difference of that phthalo green. It's a really strong green. But I'm going to put a little bit of orange to that and dirty it up. And that will become my bit of field in the foreground, like that, across there. And I'm just going to leave almost white paper, not quite, but a little bit of white paper just to give me sparkles of light through the field. And while I've got that, use some raw sienna, a little bit of green into it from a previous painting, not a problem. Raw sienna, let's just drop that into there so we get a sense of that field and that track that's running through there. Once this is dry, we can actually add to it. Let's just run that all the way off so we've got that covered. And there's mainly our painting is done. All we've got to do now is come back in, and once it's dry, and we can just put in a few trees, a few shrubs, and a few lines that are in the field, and we can yeah, we can just call that one finished. Okay, so it's all dried off now. Now the paper I'm using is a 200 pound in weight, which I think is about 423, something like that, GSM. It's a Daler Rowney product. It says it's a rough, but I think it's more of a knot surface, to be quite honest with you. Although there's a nice little bump in there to leave some white paper. Now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to put my greens together. So my trees want to be fairly light. So I'm going to be using some Aureolin and maybe actually add some more of the yellow ochre to that. Makes quite a good green. Put some of the phthalo green into that, and let's get a nice spring summery green. And this is going to be the light side of some of our trees in here. So I'm just going to literally a little bit of dry brush across there and to some of these bushes through there and there, and that's that part done. We're going to put some in the distance, but we're going to put another one that's fairly close through here, like that, just to give a nice sense. And once that's dry, or whilst it's dry, we can come back in with a darker value. Now the darker value green could be a dark green, but you could equally make a violet, dirty violet colour like this by putting some Ultramarine Violet to the green that we had, or even adding some more green. Look how we can make a very strong dark green, a cool green, by coming in with the violet colour. So let's just tap in one or two darker values into here, a little bit more solid as it comes across here into the sky, leaving little parts to excite the idea that you can see through the tree, natural breaks within the tree. I'm going to bring a little bit more warmth into that and make that a little darker, I think. So by bringing some green and orange together, we're going to make a warmer green, because this tree can take it. It's much closer to us, so we can actually get away with putting this much warmer, darker green colour into this tree. Wouldn't want to use this for one that is a long way off, but we can certainly use it into the one that's very close to. I'm going to bring that down. I want to suggest that that's coming down this line here. So I'm going to bring that down to meet somewhere through there on this set. Notice how I'm using negative spaces to create the contour in the field and little breaks in the shrubs or whatever might be there. I'm going to bring another part and shadow part of this side across here, definitely leaving a little bit of light to suggest that this tree is slightly behind the current set that I've just been painting. Another one there, and take that off to one side. Nice bit of dark in there. We'll set this one up, and you can take this as high or as low as you want to. It needs to be lower than this one. This one is definitely the strongest element in the painting. It sets the whole scene for a nice display of shape and the composition. Now I'm going to come in with some Ultramarine Violet, which is a little bit dirty, which is no problem with that, and I'm going to bring some of that green into it. Now I've got a really dirty green, maybe slightly greener, and I want to suggest the trees in the background. These are way off trees. They will dry much lighter. There's a little bit less pigment, more water to these, so they will create, oh, didn't want to go down that far, just bring that through to there, and we've got a nice suggestion of some trees in the background like that. Come back to this one, let's put in a nice deep shadow through here, so we can bring this one up and bring it to there like that. So we've got a nice secondary bush in the foreground like that. Now then, I think that's quite solid there as a colour, and I'm not too happy with the colour I actually put there. I think it could have been a little cooler. So what I'm going to do is, using the dampness of the brush, just carefully tease out some of that colour. Just lift it back out so that when it does properly dry, it will be much lighter and somewhere where I was hoping it would have been in the first place. And just gently teasing the pigment off the paper. You're not going to get rid of it all because the contrast is way too strong. But there we are. Hopefully that will have done what I hope it will do. And that gives us our distance. Now I'm also a little bit unhappy here. I just want to lift some of this out. Now I can get away with that if I'm careful. If I don't go too mad, my brush is quite clean of colour, but it's got very little water in it either. I'm squeezing it out into my hand, which is very wet, but got some paper towel in it, and I'm just using it to lift out some of the pigment and make a little bit more variation into some of these paint marks that I've just put in. I think that will create another level of lights and darks in this particular tree. There we are. I think we've got away with that quite nicely. I'm not unhappy with that. I want to leave that nice dark line there because that gives me a lot of suggestion with the field and what's happening. Now I've got a suggestion of the track here. Now I'm going to put in a little bit more green and bits and pieces just to suggest that there are little undulations, tuffets of grass, all sorts of things. But I'm making them lead up to the top of the field and just making a little bit more of some of this field information, like furrows with weeds on where it's been ploughed by the farmer at some point and has been left fallow for a little while, things like that. And I can bring a little bit more orange, a bit more warmth into some of those, so we get a different colour coming in. It just creates a lovely aspect to draw the eye into the whole picture. And how long has this painting taken? Not very long, I hope. Not too long anyway. Certainly it's one that you can sort of sit down and in the evening and just do some sketching and create something like this. And it's just another one that you can maybe sell at one of these particular shows, society shows. And I know that the shows locally to me, they have little tables these days where you can have mounted in plastic and a mount and a backing with your price and your name on, and you sit and it sits there in a little basket or something along with all the other contributors, and you know, people can flick through, and if it's not unreasonably priced, then people will like to buy it and add it to their collection. And it's not so big that it's going to take a lot of money for them to actually frame it. So it's a really nice idea to create lots of little interesting paintings that you can then sell at a much better price and attract more buyers. And if you can sell quite a few of these, then you soon make your money. So that's just a little observation, a little bit of advice from me anyway. There we go. I think we've got a nice little picture. If you want to be a little bit more, then there's nothing stopping you, as I would often do if I can find my little brush. Just put a few generic birds into the scene. It's the Romney Marsh, so we've got gulls, we've got corvids, crows and rooks flying everywhere. So it's just nice to have that little bit of life other than the trees, etc. in your painting. If you're going to do these, then try and make them odd numbers. Don't necessarily make even numbers. It doesn't work well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Odd number. There you go. 9. So there we go. We've got a nice bit of interest now. We've got a lovely pastoral scene of the Romney Marshes. And it is number 1, I hope, of a series of paintings that I can then make. If I get the right mount on there, just to show you when it's in place. It looks, I don't know if I've actually got the right mounts, but there we are. It's something like that, and you've got a nice little picture that you can sell.